Miles Harrington chose the brightest hallway in the hospital, the one with glass walls and witnesses to make it official. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The signature was enough. Across from him, Autumn Harrington sat still, one hand resting on a folder that held everything he had just walked away from. Inside the ICU, their son fought for breath. "This is no longer my financial responsibility." Doctors paused. A lawyer looked up. No one spoke. Miles left without turning back. What he didn't know was simple. The future he was protecting no longer belonged to him. If you believe silence doesn't mean weakness, stay with this story until the end. And before we continue, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Subscribe if you stand with truth even when it moves quietly. Autumn Harrington had never needed to raise her voice to be heard. Long before anyone thought to listen, she had already learned the value of watching instead. At 34, she had built a career inside systems most people didn't even realize existed. Halcyon Regulatory Group occupied 3 quiet floors in a glass building downtown, far from the noise of venture capital headlines and CEO spotlights. It was the kind of place where numbers moved before decisions did, where risk was mapped long before it became visible. Autumn worked in compliance. Not the kind that corrected mistakes after they happened, but the kind that noticed patterns before they became consequences. She read things people overlooked. She remembered what others forgot. And most importantly, she documented everything. There was always a notebook within reach. Not for thoughts, not for feelings, just facts. Dates, times, variations. Small shifts that didn't look like anything until they did. Her colleagues often mistook her quietness for passivity. It made their lives easier. It made hers clearer. Because while they spoke, Autumn listened. And while they moved quickly, she took note of where they stepped. Miles Harrington had once admired that about her. Years ago, before the press releases and investor calls, before his name began appearing in financial publications, he used to say she saw things no one else did, that she could read the room before it existed. Back then, he meant it as admiration. Later, it became something else. Because as Miles Harrington built Virion Systems into one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country, visibility became everything. He learned how to speak in headlines, how to control narratives, how to turn uncertainty into confidence with a single sentence delivered at the right time. And confidence over time turned into certainty, then into expectation, and eventually into something quieter but heavier. The assumption that he was always right. Virion Systems specialized in predictive infrastructure software that anticipated logistics, optimized supply chains, and positioned itself as indispensable to industries that couldn't afford inefficiency. It was ambitious. It was aggressive. And under Miles's leadership, it grew fast enough to attract something larger. Stratos Global, a multinational conglomerate with interests that stretched across energy, transportation, and defense. The kind of company that didn't just invest, they absorbed. The merger, if completed, would be valued at $10 billion. $10 billion. The number moved through the industry like a signal flare. Analysts called it transformative. Media outlets called it inevitable. Miles called it timing. At home, the word felt different. Timing meant missed dinners. It meant conversations postponed until they no longer needed to happen. It meant a phone placed face down on the table, vibrating once, then again, then going still. Autumn noticed these things. Not immediately, but consistently. Their home in Westchester had once been filled with small, ordinary rhythms. Morning routines, shared meals, the quiet familiarity of knowing what the other person would reach for without asking. Now it held space. Not empty space, but rearranged space. Miles occupied more of it, even when he wasn't there. His schedules dictated movement. His priorities defined silence. And Autumn adjusted, not by asking for more, but by requiring less. Noah Harrington was 8 years old when he learned how to count heartbeats. Not because he was taught, but because he had to. Congenital heart conditions didn't announce themselves loudly. They appeared in small limitations, shortness of breath, fatigue that came earlier than expected, a need to stop when other children kept running. Autumn had noticed the signs before the diagnosis. She always did. By the time the doctors confirmed it, she had already begun organizing information. Appointments, specialists, treatment options, probabilities. Miles had attended the first consultation. He asked direct questions, efficient ones. What are the chances of full recovery? What's the long-term outlook? How soon can we correct this? The doctor, Dr. Rachel Stein, answered carefully. This isn't something we correct, once she said. It's something we manage over time. Miles nodded. Autumn wrote it down. In the months that followed, the differences in how they handled reality became more defined. Miles approached Noah's condition like a problem to be solved. Autumn approached it like a system to be understood. He searched for outcomes. She tracked variables. He asked when it would be over. She prepared for what came next. There had been a time when those differences balanced each other. Now, they began to separate them. The first real shift wasn't loud. It didn't come with an argument or a decision. It appeared in a conversation that ended too quickly. Miles had been on a call something about closing alignment with Stratos. His tone was controlled, precise. The kind he reserved for people who needed to be convinced. When he finished, Autumn was still at the table. She had been waiting. Noah's follow-up is next Thursday, she said. They want to run additional imaging. Miles glanced at his calendar. I might be in San Francisco. Can it be moved? Autumn paused. They said it shouldn't be. Miles exhaled slowly. Then go ahead without me. Just send me the report. He said it the way he handled everything now, efficiently, without friction, as if involvement could be delegated. Autumn didn't respond right away. Not because she didn't have something to say, but because she was deciding whether saying it would change anything. She had already begun to understand the answer. That night, after Noah had gone to bed, she sat at the kitchen table with her notebook. She didn't write about the conversation. She wrote the date, the time, and one line missed presence. First instance acknowledged. It was not an emotional record. It was a pattern. At Halcyon, Autumn's work required her to identify irregularities in financial behavior before they triggered regulatory attention. She knew how anomalies started. Small deviations, minor inconsistencies, things that could be explained individually but not collectively. At home, she began to notice something similar. Miles traveled more frequently. His explanations remained consistent. Investor alignment, strategic positioning, final stage negotiations. Each one sounded valid, individually. But together, they created a rhythm that no longer aligned with anything outside of his work. Autumn didn't question him, not directly. Instead, she began to observe. Receipts left on the counter. Flight itineraries forwarded to the wrong email. Calendar entries that didn't match conversations. She didn't confront. She recorded. Because Autumn understood something Miles had long stopped considering. Truth didn't reveal itself through confrontation. It revealed itself through consistency. Weeks passed, then months. The merger moved closer. The house grew quieter. And in that quiet, Autumn began to see the shape of something forming. Not clearly, not completely, but enough to recognize that what was changing wasn't temporary. It was structural. One evening, while reviewing documents for work, she noticed something that didn't belong. A familiar name, Virion Systems. It appeared in a compliance cross-reference tied to a broader regulatory review involving Stratos Global. The file wasn't directly assigned to her, but it passed through a system she had access to. She opened it. Not out of suspicion, not yet, but out of habit. Inside were preliminary notes. Nothing conclusive, just flags. Minor discrepancies in reporting structures. Timing differences between declared and actual transactions. Language that suggested internal adjustments made pre-disclosure. Autumn read it once, then again. She didn't draw conclusions. She didn't need to. Instead, she reached for her notebook and added a new entry. Virion, flagged externally. Initial observation requires tracking. Across the city, Miles Harrington was being celebrated for a deal that hadn't yet been signed. On television, they called him visionary. At home, Autumn turned the page, because she understood something he didn't. Not everything that grows quickly is stable, and not every structure built on confidence is built to last. She didn't act, not yet. She watched, and she waited, because timing, unlike ambition, could not be forced. And Autumn Harrington had always been patient, even before anyone realized they should be. The changes in Miles Harrington did not arrive with a single moment that could be pointed to and named. They unfolded gradually in ways that resisted confrontation but accumulated into certainty. Autumn noticed this long before she allowed herself to define it. Miles had always traveled. That in itself was not new. What changed was the pattern. Before, his trips followed purpose, scheduled, communicated, predictable. There had been context, names, agendas, outcomes. Now there were only destinations. San Francisco, Chicago, Dallas. Each one presented as necessary. Each one explained just enough to prevent questions, but not enough to invite trust. Autumn did not ask where he was going anymore. Instead, she watched how he prepared to leave. That was where the truth had begun to shift. He packed differently, more carefully, more selectively. 2 phones instead of 1. A laptop that never left his side, even at home. Calls taken outside. Conversations paused when she entered the room. Not abruptly, not suspiciously, just consistently. Consistency, Autumn knew, was never accidental. At halcyon regulatory group, patterns like these often preceded internal reviews. Employees who adjusted routines, data that appeared in the wrong sequence, access logs that didn't match declared workflows. Small things, but repeated. And repetition in her line of work was evidence. So Autumn began to treat her home the same way she treated her job. Quietly, methodically, without assumption. She created a second notebook, not for emotions, not for marriage, but for observation. Date, time, deviation. March 12th, call taken at 11:47 p.m. Duration 23 minutes. Language controlled, tone unfamiliar. March 18th, flight itinerary San Francisco. Calendar entry states Chicago. March 21st, email notification preview, forwarded thread, disappeared before full access. She didn't interpret these entries. She simply recorded them, because interpretation could be wrong, but documentation rarely was. Miles, for his part, continued forward. From the outside, his trajectory remained intact, impressive even. Media coverage increased. Industry recognition followed. He appeared on panels, spoke in interviews, described the Virion-Stratos merger as a natural evolution of strategic alignment. His words were precise, polished, convincing. At home, those same words became shorter, less necessary. One evening, he returned later than expected. No explanation, no apology, just a quiet presence moving through the house as if time had not passed differently for anyone else. Autumn was in the kitchen reviewing a set of compliance summaries. She didn't look up immediately, not out of indifference, but because she had learned that reacting too quickly often ended conversations before they began. "You're still up," Miles said. It wasn't a question. Autumn closed the folder in front of her. "So are you." A pause. Not uncomfortable, just unfilled. "I'll be in Boston next week," he added. 3 days. Autumn nodded. She did not ask why. She did not ask who. "Is Noah's appointment still on Tuesday?" he asked. "It is." "Can you handle that?" Autumn met his gaze briefly. "I always do." Miles held her eyes for a moment longer than usual, not in challenge, but in recognition of something he couldn't quite place. Then he looked away. Upstairs, Noah slept with the steady, monitored rhythm of someone whose body required attention even in rest. Machines tracked what others took for granted. Breathing, heart rate, intervals. Autumn checked on him before going to bed. She always did. There was a small monitor beside his bed, portable, quiet. She glanced at it. Numbers within range. For now. She adjusted the blanket slightly. smoothed the corner, stayed a moment longer than necessary. Then she left the room. Back downstairs, Miles was already on his phone. The screen dimmed as she entered. He placed it face down. Again. Autumn didn't acknowledge it. She didn't need to. Instead, she returned to her notes. At Halcyon, the file she had opened days earlier did not leave her thoughts. Virion systems. Flagged, not escalated, not yet, but present. That alone was enough. She accessed the system again the next morning. Not outside protocol, but within the boundaries she understood well enough to navigate without triggering attention. The file had grown. Slightly. Additional notes. Internal inconsistencies between projected valuations and underlying asset structures. Language that suggested adjustments made before disclosure thresholds were reached. Nothing illegal on the surface. Nothing provable. But enough to suggest direction. Autumn read each line carefully, then cross-referenced the data with what she already knew. Miles's travel, timing of announcements, internal calendar shifts. Individually, they remained separate. Together, they began to align. She did not react. She did not confront. Instead, she began to collect. Emails first. Not by accessing anything restricted, but by observing what passed through shared systems, forwarded threads, partial chains, subject lines that appeared briefly before being deleted. She captured what she could, screenshots, timestamps, headers. Then she organized them, chronologically. Next came financial summaries, public filings, quarterly projections, numbers that looked correct but moved too quickly. She compared them against industry benchmarks, standard growth curves, expected variance. Virion's numbers exceeded them, not by a margin that raised immediate alarm, but by a pattern that resisted explanation. Growth without corresponding infrastructure. Valuation without proportional risk. Autumn wrote one line in her notebook, acceleration exceeds structural support. Monitor closely. At home, Miles prepared for another trip. Boston, 3 days. He packed late, later than usual. Autumn watched from the doorway, not intrusively, not visibly, just long enough to notice one thing. The second phone. He placed it in his bag last, carefully, deliberately. Autumn did not move. She did not need to know what was on it, only that it existed. That night after he left for the airport, she returned to the kitchen table. The house was quiet. Noah asleep upstairs. The hum of the refrigerator the only sound. She opened her notebook, turned to a new page, and for the first time she added something different. Not just observation, a question. What is being concealed, and why now? She did not answer it. Not yet. Because questions like patterns required time. And Autumn Harrington had already learned the cost of moving too early. Across the country, Miles Harrington boarded a flight under a name that appeared on no shared calendar. His trajectory remained forward, confident, uninterrupted. He believed the distance between what was visible and what was real remained intact. He believed control was still his. And for now, it was. But only because Autumn had chosen not to close that distance. Not yet. Because unlike Miles, she was not building momentum. She was building clarity. And clarity, once complete, did not require force to be understood. It only required the right moment to be seen. Noah Harrington's condition worsened on a Tuesday morning that began without warning. Autumn had already been awake for an hour. She sat at the kitchen table with her notebook open, reviewing the previous week's entries. The house was quiet, still wrapped in that fragile calm before movement began. She had learned to value those moments. They were the only ones not shaped by interruption. Upstairs, Noah called her name. It was not loud. It did not need to be. Autumn closed the notebook immediately and moved. By the time she reached his room, she saw it before he could explain. His breathing was shallow, not dramatically so, but uneven in a way she recognized too well. His hand rested over his chest, fingers curled slightly, as if it were holding something in place. "How long has it felt like this?" she asked. Noah hesitated. Since last night. I thought it would go away. Autumn nodded once. She did not correct him. She did not reassure him with words she could not guarantee. Instead, she reached for the monitor. The numbers confirmed what she already knew. They needed to go. Within 15 minutes, she had everything ready. Medical folder, insurance documents, medication list, a small bag with essentials. She moved through the process without wasted motion, each step following the last with practiced precision. Miles was not in the house. He had left early that morning. Boston, he had said. Autumn did not call him. Not yet. She focused on what was immediate. Noah sat quietly in the passenger seat as they drove. He did not ask questions. He had learned in his own way that his mother's silence meant something was being handled. Traffic moved slower than it should have. Autumn adjusted the route twice, calculating alternatives without hesitation. At the hospital, everything became faster. Sliding doors opened. Voices rose. Movement accelerated. Dr. Rachel Stein met them within minutes. What changed, she asked. Autumn handed over the folder. Increased irregularity. Started last night. Worsened this morning. Dr. Stein nodded as she scanned the notes. We're admitting him. We need imaging and continuous monitoring. Noah was taken into the ICU without delay. Autumn stood just outside the room as the doors closed. She did not step forward. She did not follow. She knew the boundary. Instead, she sat down in the nearest chair and opened her notebook. Time of arrival, symptoms, progression, initial response. She wrote each detail carefully, not because it would change what was happening, but because it ensured nothing would be lost. Hours passed in measured intervals. Updates came in fragments, stabilizing, monitoring, waiting. Autumn remained where she was, still, present, precise. At 11:42 a.m., she called Miles. He answered on the third ring. I'm in the middle of something, he said. His voice was controlled, low, not distracted but directed elsewhere. Noah's been admitted, Autumn said. A pause followed. Not long. Just enough. How serious, he asked. Serious enough to be here. Another pause. Longer this time. I have a meeting I can't leave, he said. We're in final alignment with Stratos. Autumn listened. She did not interrupt. I'll try to catch a flight tonight, he added. You don't need to try, Autumn said. You need to decide. Miles exhaled quietly. This deal is at a critical stage. Autumn looked toward the ICU doors. I understand. The words were accurate. They did not mean agreement. I'll call you after this meeting, he said. The line disconnected before she could respond. Autumn lowered the phone. She did not call again. Instead, she wrote one line. Father notified. No immediate return. Then she closed the notebook. The rest of the day unfolded without him. Dr. Stein returned in the afternoon with updated imaging. There's increased strain, she said. We're adjusting treatment, but we need to monitor closely over the next 24 hours. Autumn nodded. What are the variables, she asked. Dr. Stein met her eyes. Response to medication. Stability overnight. If there's no improvement, we'll need to consider intervention. Autumn wrote it down. Variables, outcomes, conditions. She did not ask for reassurance. She asked for clarity. By evening, the hospital had settled into a quieter rhythm. Machines continued their steady work. Staff moved with controlled urgency. The world outside faded into distance. Autumn sat beside Noah's bed. His breathing had stabilized slightly, not enough to relax, but enough to hold. She watched the monitor, not constantly, but consistently. At 7:18 p.m., her phone lit up. Miles. She answered. I spoke with Derek, he said immediately. We're close to final terms. I need to stay through tomorrow. Autumn did not respond right away. She let the words settle. Understood, she said. I'll be there as soon as I can. There was something in his tone, not urgency, not regret, just sequence, as if presence followed priority. Autumn looked at Noah. He asked for you earlier, she said. Miles was silent for a moment. "Tell him I'll come soon." Autumn nodded, though he could not see it. "I will." The call ended. She placed the phone down beside her. Noah stirred slightly. "Was that Dad?" he asked, voice soft. "Yes. Is he coming?" Autumn adjusted the blanket. "He said he will." Noah nodded. He did not ask when. Children learned timing differently. Through patterns, through repetition, through absence. Autumn did not correct the answer. She had learned that certainty, when misplaced, created more damage than silence. Later that night, after Noah had fallen asleep again, Autumn stepped out into the hallway. The hospital lights were dimmer now, quieter, more reflective. She walked toward the waiting area, then stopped. There was a screen mounted on the wall. Financial news played without sound. Miles appeared on it. A recorded interview. His posture confident, his expression composed. A caption beneath him read, "Virion Systems CEO discusses historic merger with Stratos Global." Autumn watched for a moment. He spoke about vision, about scale, about the future. The words were measured, strategic, effective. She did not stay long. She turned away and returned to her seat. Then she opened her notebook again. Not to record the interview, not to document his absence, but to add something new. A reference point, Virion public narrative versus internal inconsistency. She paused, then wrote another line beneath it, discrepancy widening. Across the city, emails continued to move. Decisions continued to form. Numbers continued to adjust. Inside Virion Systems, a message had been sent earlier that day. From Derek Vaughn, Chief Financial Officer. Subject line, pre-disclosure alignment. The email contained revised valuation figures, adjusted upward, subtly. Just enough to influence perception before formal release. Copied only to a limited group, Miles included. The timing aligned with the meeting he had chosen not to leave. Autumn did not see the full email that night, not yet. But she would. Because systems, no matter how controlled, always left traces. And Autumn knew where to look. Back in the hospital room, Noah's monitor maintained its steady rhythm. For now. Autumn sat beside him once more. Still, observing, recording what mattered, letting everything else move around her. She did not rush. She did not react. Because she understood something that had already begun to take shape. The choices being made were no longer temporary. They were directional. And direction once set did not easily change. Miles believed he was securing the future. Autumn was beginning to see what it might cost. She closed her notebook, not because there was nothing left to write, but because what came next would require more than observation. It would require confirmation, and confirmation required access, time, and patience, all things she already possessed. By the third day, the hospital had settled into a rhythm Autumn could work within. Not comfortably, but predictably. Noah's condition had stabilized enough to avoid immediate intervention, but not enough to remove concern. The doctors spoke in measured language, careful, conditional, always leaving space for change. Autumn understood that language. It was the same language used in compliance reports when certainty had not yet been earned. She did not look for reassurance in it. She looked for structure. Morning rounds came at 7:10 a.m. Updates followed at intervals that aligned more with staff rotation than patient progress. Machines provided continuous data, but interpretation came in fragments. Autumn adapted. She began mapping the hospital's internal cadence the same way she mapped systems at work. Time of medication, response delays, patterns in Noah's vitals. Each detail entered her notebook with quiet precision, because when information arrived inconsistently, structure had to be built manually. Miles did not return. His calls came twice a day, once in the morning, once late in the evening. Each call followed a similar structure. A question about Noah, a statement about the deal, a promise to come soon. The order never changed. Autumn noticed that. She recorded it once, then stopped. Repetition no longer needed documentation. It had already become pattern. On the fourth day, Autumn left the hospital for exactly 42 minutes, not because she wanted to, but because she needed access. Halcyon Regulatory Group required physical presence for certain levels of internal review. Remote access was restricted for the kind of data she now intended to examine more closely. She had not requested permission. She did not need to. Her role granted her entry into systems others could not navigate without oversight. That was the nature of compliance. It existed both inside and outside visibility. The building was quiet when she arrived. Late afternoon. Most departments were either closing down or transitioning into end-of-day routines. Autumn moved through the security checkpoint without pause. Badge scanned, access granted. No questions. Her office remained unchanged. Desk organized, screens dark, files aligned. She did not sit immediately. Instead, she locked the door, then powered on her workstation. The system took 38 seconds to initialize. She counted without looking. When the interface loaded, she opened the internal compliance portal. Then she searched. Virion Systems. The file appeared again. Larger now, updated. Autumn did not rush. She opened each section methodically. Cross-references first. External flags. Regulatory notes. Then internal observations. There were more this time. Not conclusions, but concerns. Timing discrepancies between reported revenue streams and actual cash flow movement. Asset valuation increases that did not align with underlying infrastructure expansion. Language that suggested adjustments had been made prior to disclosure thresholds. She read each line twice, then began cross-referencing. She opened a second window. Financial databases, public filings, archived reports, numbers that were meant to be transparent. She aligned them side by side, not looking for errors, looking for movement, where values shifted, where timing diverged, where explanation became insufficient. Within 20 minutes, a pattern began to emerge, not obvious, but consistent. Certain entities appeared repeatedly in the background, not central, not highlighted, but present. Northbridge Holdings, Larkspur Ventures, both registered as investment vehicles, both connected through layered ownership structures, both tied indirectly to Virion's reported growth channels. Autumn wrote the names down, then searched again, this time deeper. She traced ownership, board connections, transaction timelines. Each step required patience, because the information was not hidden. It was distributed, and distribution was often more effective than concealment. After 30 minutes, she found the first direct alignment, a transaction from Northbridge Holdings that corresponded almost exactly with a reported increase in Virion's projected valuation. The timing was precise. Too precise. Not impossible, but unlikely. She noted it. Then continued. Larkspur Ventures showed a similar pattern. Different date, different amount, same effect. Artificial inflation. Not large enough to trigger immediate scrutiny, but enough to influence perception, enough to support a narrative. Autumn leaned back slightly, not in surprise, but in confirmation. This was no longer irregularity. It was structure. She printed the relevant documents, hard copies, physical evidence. Because digital data could be altered, paper required intent. As the printer worked quietly beside her, she opened her notebook. New page. She wrote in clear, steady handwriting. Shell entities identified. Northbridge Holdings. Larkspur Ventures. Function valuation support. Method timing alignment with reported growth. Then she added one more line. Requires corroboration. She did not assume, she verified. The printer stopped. Autumn gathered the documents, aligned them carefully, placed them into a folder she had brought with her. Then she powered down the system, unlocked the door, and left. No one stopped her. No one noticed. Because she had moved within the system exactly as it was designed to allow. Back at the hospital, nothing had changed. And everything had. Noah remained stable. Machines continued their quiet work, the world inside the room unchanged. But Autumn had crossed a line. Not visibly, not publicly, but internally. She was no longer observing a possibility. She was documenting a reality. That night, Miles called later than usual. 11:26 p.m., Autumn answered on the first ring. "I think we're there," he said. His voice carried something new. Not relief, not excitement. Something closer to certainty. "Final terms are being reviewed. We should have confirmation within 48 hours. Autumn listened. She did not respond immediately. "That's good," she said finally. Miles exhaled. "You don't sound surprised." Autumn looked at the folder beside her. "I've been expecting it." A pause. "You should be here when this closes," he said. "This changes everything." Autumn's gaze shifted to Noah. "Sleeping? Breathing?" "Monitored. It already has," she said. Miles did not respond. The silence stretched. Then he spoke again. "I'll come after this, I promise." Autumn did not write that down. She did not need to. Some statements repeated often enough became unnecessary to track. "Good night, Miles," she said. The call ended. Autumn placed the phone down, then opened the folder. She reviewed the documents again, not because she doubted them, but because repetition ensured accuracy. Each number, each date, each connection. They held. They aligned. They confirmed. This was not a mistake. It was design, and design required intention, which meant someone knew, which meant someone had decided. Autumn closed the folder, then opened her notebook one last time that night. She wrote slowly, deliberately. Evidence phase initiated. Do not act prematurely. Timing critical. Then she underlined the final word, once. Across the city, Miles Harrington prepared for a deal that would define his career. He believed the foundation beneath it was secure. He believed the structure would hold. He believed control remained his. Autumn did not challenge those beliefs, not yet, because she understood something he did not. Control once assumed often went untested, and untested structures failed quietly. Until they didn't, she turned off the light beside Noah's bed, sat back in her chair, and waited. Because the truth was no longer a question. It was a sequence. And sequences, when complete, revealed everything. By the time Noah's condition stabilized enough to allow limited rest, the world outside the hospital had already begun moving faster. Autumn noticed it not through conversation, but through silence. Miles had stopped calling in the mornings. The pattern shifted without explanation. The evening calls remained but shorter now, more compressed, as if time itself had become a resource he could no longer afford to spend. Autumn recorded the change once. Morning call removed, pattern deviation. Then she closed the notebook. Some absences did not require repetition to be understood. Noah slept more during the day. Medication adjusted his rhythm, pulling him in and out of shallow rest. His body responded, but slowly. Recovery was not linear. It moved in increments that could not be rushed. Autumn adapted her own rhythm to match his. She read medical charts, asked precise questions, logged every response. She spoke less, but when she did, it was specific. What threshold indicates intervention? What variability is acceptable overnight? What changes would trigger escalation? Dr. Rachel Stein answered with the same careful clarity. "We watch for trends, not moments," she said one afternoon. "One number doesn't tell us much. The pattern does." Autumn nodded. She understood that better than most. Patterns always mattered more than isolated events. That afternoon, while Noah slept, Autumn stepped into the hallway. Her phone vibrated once. A notification. Not from Miles. From a financial news alert. She opened it. The headline appeared without delay. Virion Systems CEO spotted with Stratos Global Executive ahead of merger confirmation. Autumn read it once. Then again. There was a photo attached, taken outside a private restaurant in downtown Manhattan. Miles stood beside a woman Autumn recognized only from internal documents. Victoria Hale, head of public relations at Stratos Global. They were close enough in the image to remove ambiguity. Not inappropriate in a way that would cause scandal. but not distant enough to remain purely professional. The angle suggested familiarity. The caption suggested alignment. The timing suggested something else. Autumn did not react. She did not zoom in. She did not analyze the image beyond what was already clear. Instead, she noted the date, the time, the location. Then she closed the article, because confirmation did not require emotional interpretation, only acknowledgement. That evening, Miles called later than usual. 11:52 p.m., Autumn answered. "You saw the article?" he asked. His voice was controlled, not defensive, not apologetic, just prepared. "Yes, it's nothing," he said. "PR alignment. She's coordinating messaging for the merger." Autumn listened. She did not interrupt. "We've been meeting with her team all week," he continued. "This is just optics." Autumn looked at Noah, still sleeping, monitored, stable for now. "Of course," she said. Miles paused. "You don't sound concerned." Autumn considered the statement. "I'm not." It was true. Concern implied uncertainty. She had already moved beyond that. Miles exhaled. "Good. I didn't want unnecessary complications right now." The word unnecessary remained in the space between them. Autumn did not challenge it. "Focus on what you need to," she said. "I am," he replied. The call ended shortly after. No further explanation. No attempt to extend the conversation. Efficiency had replaced connection entirely. Autumn placed the phone down, then opened her notebook. She wrote only one line. Public exposure confirmed. Relationship classification pending. She did not assign meaning, not yet, because meaning required context, and context required more than one data point. The next morning, Autumn returned to Halcyon. This time, she stayed longer. 3 hours, long enough to deepen the structure she had begun. The office was quieter than before. Fewer people, less movement. End-of-week transitions had thinned the building. Autumn did not engage with anyone. She moved directly to her workstation, logged in, accessed the system. The Virion file had expanded again, not dramatically, but enough. New entries had been added under internal review notes. Language had shifted, less tentative, more precise. Potential misrepresentation of asset-backed valuation. Discrepancies between internal projections and reported figures. Further investigation recommended pending additional data. Autumn read each line carefully, then began correlating. She opened transaction logs tied to the entities she had identified. Northbridge Holdings, Larkspur Ventures. This time she extended the search window, looking further back, 6 months, 9 months, 12. Patterns emerged more clearly with the distance. Transactions appeared in clusters, always preceding valuation increases, always timed just before key reporting periods, always structured to appear external, but never entirely separate. Autumn traced ownership layers again, deeper this time, through subsidiaries, through holding structures, until one name appeared, indirectly, but consistently, a trust, registered under a legal entity that linked through 2 layers of separation back to Miles Harrington, not directly, not visibly, but enough. Autumn did not react. She did not pause. She printed the documents, aligned them, added them to the folder, then wrote in her notebook, indirect ownership identified, linked to primary subject probable. She underlined the word probable because probability in compliance was not enough. It needed to become certainty, and certainty required one more element: intent. That evening, Noah's condition improved slightly, his breathing steadier, his vitals more consistent. Dr. Stein allowed a small adjustment. "Short visits outside ICU tomorrow," she said, "if stability holds." Autumn nodded. "Thank you." It was the first time she used those words that day. Not out of withholding, but because gratitude, like everything else, was given when it aligned with truth. Later, as Noah slept, Autumn sat alone again. The folder rested beside her. Heavier now, not physically, but in what it contained. Emails, transactions, connections, patterns. Each piece aligned, each piece confirmed. All that remained was intent. Proof that what had been constructed was not accidental, that it had been decided, planned, executed. Her phone vibrated. A message this time, not a call, from Miles. Closing date confirmed. Monday. Autumn read it. Then placed the phone down without responding. She opened her notebook. New page. Closing timeline established. She paused, then added one more line. Final evidence required before disclosure. She closed the notebook, looked at Noah, then at the folder. The sequence was nearing completion, not rushed, not forced, but inevitable. Miles believed he was approaching the most important moment of his career. Autumn understood that he was, but not in the way he expected. Because while he had been building momentum, she had been building structure. And structure, once complete, did not need to be defended. It only needed to be revealed. She leaned back in her chair, closed her eyes for a moment. Not in exhaustion, but in calculation. Timing. Always timing. Monday was approaching, and with it, a decision. Not about what was true, that had already been established, but about when it would be seen. Across the city, Miles prepared statements, rehearsed language, aligned expectations. He believed control remained intact. He believed outcomes were secured. He believed the future was already decided. Autumn did not interrupt those beliefs, because interruption was unnecessary. When the structure beneath them was already shifting, quietly, precisely, and completely. The hospital billing office was located 2 floors below the ICU. Autumn had passed it several times over the past week without entering. It was not part of her immediate system. Not yet. Medical stability came first. Financial structure followed. But on Friday morning, a nurse informed her quietly that billing would need to speak with her. Just to update the account status, the nurse said. Standard procedure. Autumn nodded. She understood what that meant. She checked Noah's monitor first, stable. Then she stood, adjusted her coat, and walked toward the elevator. The hallway outside the billing office was quieter than the rest of the hospital. No urgency, no alarms, just low voices and closed doors. Inside, a woman sat behind a glass partition. Autumn Harrington, she asked. Yes. The woman smiled politely and gestured to a chair. I'm Karen Doyle from Patient Financial Services. I just need to go over a few things with you. Autumn sat down. Karen turned her screen slightly. Your son's care has been ongoing for several days now. ICU imaging medication. As of this morning, the total has reached a level where we need to confirm coverage. Autumn listened. Your insurance file shows primary coverage under Miles Harrington, Karen continued. But we received an update this morning. She paused, then clicked something on the screen. The coverage has been withdrawn. Autumn did not move. Karen watched her carefully, as if waiting for a reaction that did not come. I'm sorry, Karen added. It appears the policyholder has declined responsibility for continued expenses related to this case. Autumn nodded once. When was this filed? 8:12 a.m. Autumn checked the time. 8:47 a.m. now. 35 minutes. She reached for her phone. Scrolled once. A message from Miles. Sent at 8:15 a.m. Temporary adjustment. We'll sort it out after Monday. Autumn read it without expression, then placed the phone down. Karen continued carefully. In situations like this, we can discuss alternative arrangements. Payment plans, asset-backed guarantees, or I'll take responsibility, Autumn said. Karen stopped. I'm sorry, I'll sign as guarantor. Karen hesitated. This is a significant amount, she said, and it will continue to increase. Autumn nodded. I understand. Karen studied her for a moment. Do you have assets available for verification? Yes. The answer came without hesitation, because Autumn had already calculated that possibility. Karen turned the screen back toward herself. I'll need documentation. Autumn reached into her bag, removed a folder, not the one containing evidence, a different one. Prepared, organized. Inside were account statements, property records, investment summaries. Karen reviewed them carefully. The silence stretched. Then she nodded. This will be sufficient for now. She printed a set of documents, placed them in front of Autumn. These authorize you as the primary financial guarantor for all current and ongoing treatment. Autumn read each page, line by line, not because she doubted the content, but because verification was habit. Then she signed, her name steady, consistent, final. Karen collected the documents. "I'll process this immediately," she said. "You should receive confirmation within the hour." Autumn stood. "Thank you." Karen hesitated, then added quietly, "If there's anything unusual about the situation, you may want to speak with legal counsel." Autumn met her eyes. "I already have." Karen nodded. As Autumn turned to leave, the door behind her opened. A man stepped in, suit, briefcase, measured presence. Mark Ellison, hospital legal counsel. He glanced at Autumn briefly, then at Karen. "Is this the Harrington file?" Karen nodded. "Yes. Coverage was withdrawn this morning. Mrs. Harrington has just assumed responsibility." Mark looked at Autumn again, this time more directly. "Mrs. Harrington, Mr. Ellison." Their exchange was brief, formal, but not unfamiliar. Mark stepped closer. "I reviewed the notice that came through," he said. "It's unusual." Autumn did not respond. Mark continued. "The policyholder has substantial declared assets. Withdrawal under these circumstances raises questions." Autumn considered his words. Not for their content, but for their timing. "Questions can be addressed," she said. Mark studied her. "You seem prepared." "I am." A pause. Then Mark nodded. "If you need anything from our office, we're available." "Thank you." Autumn left the office without looking back. The hallway felt different now, not heavier, not lighter, just clearer, because a line had been crossed. Not emotionally, but structurally. Miles had made a decision. Formal, documented, time-stamped. And in doing so, he had created something Autumn could use. Not immediately, but eventually. She returned to the ICU. Noah was awake, sitting slightly upright, color returning to his face. "Where did you go?" he asked. "Downstairs," Autumn said. "Everything okay?" Autumn adjusted the blanket. "Yes." Noah nodded. He trusted that answer, because she never gave it lightly. Later that afternoon, Mark Ellison returned. He stood just outside the room. "May I?" he asked. Autumn stepped into the hallway. Mark held a tablet. "I pulled additional records," he said. "Public filings, insurance structures, financial disclosures." Autumn listened. "The discrepancy between declared assets and the withdrawal decision is significant," he continued. "It suggests either a liquidity issue or a strategic move." Autumn looked at him. "Or something else?" Mark nodded slowly. "Yes." A pause. "You're not surprised," he said. "No." Mark studied her, then lowered his voice slightly. "If there's a broader issue here, something beyond personal finance, you should be careful." Autumn met his gaze. "I am." Mark hesitated, then added, "If this connects to corporate activity, there are implications. Legal ones." Autumn did not ask him to explain. She already knew. "That's why timing matters," she said. Mark held her eyes for a moment longer, then nodded. "If you decide to act, documentation will be critical." "It already is?" Mark exhaled quietly. "I thought it might be." He stepped back. "I'll leave you to it." As he walked away, Autumn returned to her seat. She opened her notebook. New page. Financial separation initiated by subject. Timestamp confirmed. Legal witness present. She paused, then added one more line. Intent inference strengthened. She closed the notebook. Across the city, Miles Harrington finalized preparations for Monday. Meetings aligned. Statements drafted. Investors positioned. He moved with confidence, with certainty, with the belief that every variable had been accounted for. He did not consider the hospital billing office. He did not consider the signature he had placed that morning. He did not consider the lawyer who had witnessed it. Because in his system, those details did not matter. They existed outside the structure he controlled. Autumn understood that. And she understood something more. What he had dismissed as insignificant had just become evidence, not of absence, but of intent. And intent, once established, changed everything. She looked at Noah, then at the folder beside her, then at the notebook in her hand. The sequence was complete. All that remained was timing. Monday was no longer just a closing date. It was a convergence of decisions, of actions, of truths that had been building quietly beneath the surface. Autumn did not rush toward it. She did not anticipate it with emotion. She simply prepared, because when the moment arrived, it would not require force, only precision. And she had already built that, line by line, fact by fact, without raising her voice, without asking for attention, without needing to. Daniel Brooks did not interrupt when Autumn finished speaking. He sat across from her in a conference room that carried the quiet weight of decisions made without witnesses. The firm occupied the upper floors of an older building in Midtown, one that had been renovated without erasing its original structure. Solid doors, frosted glass, sound that did not travel easily. Autumn had chosen the location carefully. Neutral ground. No direct ties to Halcyon. No visible connection to Virion. No overlap that could be traced without intent. Daniel reviewed the documents again. Emails printed in sequence, bank records aligned by date, ownership structures mapped with annotations in Autumn's precise handwriting. He did not rush. He did not speak, because what she had placed in front of him required neither speed nor reaction. It required verification. After several minutes, he leaned back slightly. "This is layered," he said. Autumn nodded. Yes. Daniel tapped one of the pages. Northbridge Holdings, Larkspur Ventures, both structured to appear external but functionally internal. That alone raises concern. He moved to another document. These transfers align too closely with valuation increases to be coincidental. Autumn said nothing. Daniel continued. And this, he added, lifting a separate sheet to the indirect trust connection. It's not visible enough to prove ownership on its own, but it establishes proximity. Autumn watched him. Not enough for enforcement, he said. Not yet. Autumn opened her notebook, wrote one line, insufficient for action, additional evidence required. Daniel noticed. You document everything he said? Yes. He nodded. Good. Silence settled again. Then Daniel spoke more deliberately. If this goes forward as is, the merger will be completed under materially misleading conditions. Autumn met his gaze. What are the implications? Daniel answered without hesitation. Investors rely on valuation integrity. If the numbers are artificially inflated, even partially, the entire structure becomes compromised. He paused. Regulatory bodies will intervene once evidence reaches a threshold. SEC, possibly DOJ, depending on intent and scale. Autumn wrote again. Threshold, SEC, DOJ. Daniel leaned forward slightly. The question is not whether there's risk, he said. There is. The question is whether you intend to act before or after the merger closes. Autumn did not answer immediately, because she had already considered both. Before meant disruption. After meant consequence. Timing has always determined impact. What changes if it happens before she asked? Daniel considered. The deal halts. Immediate investigation. Public exposure. And after the merger completes, then collapses under scrutiny. Greater damage. Wider fallout. Autumn closed her notebook. Neither option offered simplicity, only difference in scale. Daniel studied her. You're not asking for yourself, he said. No. He nodded. You're asking for the system. Autumn did not confirm it, but she did not deny it either. Daniel exhaled slowly. Then there's another factor. He reached for the audio file Autumn had included. A recording, unlabeled. He played it. Miles's voice filled the room, controlled, familiar, unaware of being recorded. We adjust pre-disclosure. It's not fraud if the final numbers hold. A second voice responded, less distinct. That's not how it works if regulators look closely. Miles again. They won't. Not before closing. Daniel stopped the recording. Silence returned. Autumn did not react. She had already heard it, multiple times. Where did you get this? Daniel asked. Internal meeting archive, Autumn said. Authorized, yes. Daniel studied her for a moment, then nodded. This changes the structure, how it establishes intent. Autumn wrote one word. Intent confirmed. Daniel continued. With this combined with the financial patterns, you have a case strong enough to trigger formal investigation. He paused. But timing still matters. Autumn looked at him. It always does. Daniel closed the folder. If you proceed, you need to be protected. I will be. He held her gaze. This will not stay contained. Once it moves fully. Autumn nodded. I understand. Daniel leaned back. Then the next step is procedural. He outlined it carefully. Submission channels, whistleblower protections, legal thresholds, documentation standards. Autumn listened without interruption. Each step aligned with what she had already begun constructing. She asked only what was necessary. What format ensures immediate review? Direct submission with corroborated evidence, Daniel said. No gaps, no assumptions. Autumn nodded. What about internal disclosure? Daniel shook his head slightly. Too slow, too controlled. It gives them time to adjust, Autumn wrote. Direct submission required. No internal delay. Daniel continued. You'll need to prepare everything in a single sequence. Clear, verifiable, impossible to reinterpret. Autumn closed the notebook. It's already structured. Daniel allowed himself a brief pause. I thought it might be. Silence followed. Not empty, just complete. Finally, silently, Daniel spoke again. There's something else you should consider. Autumn looked at him. Once this happens, there's no reversal. Not professionally, not personally. Autumn's expression did not change. I'm not looking for reversal. Daniel studied her. For what then? Autumn answered without hesitation. Accuracy. The word settled in the room. Not emotional, not dramatic, just precise. Daniel nodded once. Then you're ready. Autumn gathered the documents, aligned them, placed them back into the folder. Not hurried, not delayed, exactly as she had done every step before. As she stood to leave, Daniel added one final statement. When you choose the moment, make sure it's the only one that matters. Autumn paused, then nodded. It will be. She left the office without looking back. Outside, the city moved as it always did, unaware, unchanged, for now. Autumn returned to the hospital. Noah was awake, sitting upright, stronger than before. Did you go to work, he asked. Yes. Everything okay? Autumn adjusted his pillow. Yes. He accepted that, because her answers never varied unless they needed to. That evening, she sat beside him as the monitors continued their steady rhythm. She did not open the folder. She did not review the documents. She'd already moved beyond collection. Now it was sequence. She opened her notebook. Final preparation phase. Submission structure complete. Intent established. Timing selection pending. She closed it. Looked at Noah, then at the window. Monday approached. Miles believed it would mark completion. Autumn understood it would mark exposure. Not through confrontation, not through accusation, but through alignment. Of facts, of records, of truth presented without distortion. She did not feel urgency, only readiness. Because the system she had built did not rely on emotion. It relied on precision. And precision, once applied, did not require force. Across the city, Miles finalized the narrative he would present. He believed he controlled the story. Autumn knew he did. Until the moment he didn't. And that moment was no longer uncertain. Only waiting. By Sunday evening, the city had already begun anticipating the announcement. Financial networks ran speculative segments. Analysts debated valuation projections. Commentators framed the merger between Virion Systems and Stratos Global as inevitable, even historic. Language became more confident as uncertainty narrowed. Autumn noticed none of it directly. She did not watch the broadcasts. She did not read the commentary. not because it lacked relevance, but because it added nothing to what she already knew. Public narratives were constructed to guide perception. Autumn worked with structure, and structure did not change based on interpretation. Noah had been moved out of ICU that afternoon. His condition had improved enough to allow transfer to a monitored recovery room. The machines were fewer now, the space quieter. The urgency reduced, though not removed. Dr. Rachel Stein reviewed the latest results with Autumn near the doorway. "He's responding well," she said, still fragile but stable. Autumn nodded. "What remains uncertain?" she asked. Dr. Stein did not hesitate. "Consistency overnight. If that holds, we can begin planning discharge within a few days." Autumn wrote it down. Stability, overnight consistency, conditional discharge. Then she closed the notebook. "Thank you," she said. Dr. Stein studied her briefly. "You've handled this differently than most," she added. Autumn met her eyes. "How so?" "Most parents ask for reassurance," Dr. Stein said. "You ask for variables?" Autumn considered that. "Reassurance doesn't change outcomes," she said. Dr. Stein nodded. "No, but it changes how people feel about them." Autumn did not respond, because feeling had never been the variable she tracked. After Dr. Stein left, Autumn returned to Noah's bedside. He was awake, reading, a small book resting against his knees. "Can we go home soon?" he asked. "Soon," Autumn said. "When after the doctors confirm stability?" Noah nodded. He did not ask for a specific date. He had learned to accept conditions. Autumn sat beside him, quiet, present. Her phone remained on the table screen dark. At 8:03 p.m., it lit up. A message from Miles. "Final briefing tomorrow morning, signing at noon." Autumn read it, then placed the phone back down. She did not respond, not yet, because response implied participation, and she had already chosen a different role. She opened her notebook. New page. Closing schedule confirmed. Monday, noon. She paused, then added another line. Submission timing aligned with event. She underlined the word aligned, because alignment when precise required no explanation. It simply revealed. The folder rested in her bag, complete, organized, every document placed in sequence. Emails first, then transaction records, then ownership structures, then the audio file. Each piece labeled, each connection clear. No assumptions, no interpretation, only facts. Autumn reviewed it once more that night, not because she doubted it, but because repetition ensured clarity. She moved through each section slowly, checking dates, confirming timestamps, verifying order. When she reached the audio file, she paused, listened again. Miles's voice remained unchanged, confident, certain, unaware. Autumn did not react. She simply marked the file as final, then closed the folder. At 10:17 p.m., Miles called. Autumn answered. "I wanted to check in," he said. His tone carried something close to anticipation. "How is Noah stable?" Autumn said. "Good." A pause followed. Then Miles continued. "Tomorrow is significant." Autumn listened. "Everything we've been working toward," he added. "It all comes together." Autumn looked at Noah, then at the window. "Yes," she said. "It does." Miles seemed to accept that. "You should be here," he said. "It matters." Autumn considered the statement. Where exactly, she asked. The Stratos Building, main conference room. Autumn wrote it down. Location confirmed. "Will there be full board attendance?" she asked. "Yes, board. Legal teams, investors." "Good." Miles paused. "You sound focused." "I am." Another silence. Then Miles spoke again. "When this is done, things will be different." Autumn did not ask how, because she already understood what he meant, and what he did not. "Yes," she said, "they will." The call ended shortly after. Autumn did not write it down. Some confirmations did not require documentation. They were already part of the structure. Later that night, after Noah had fallen asleep, Autumn stepped into the hallway. The hospital was quiet. Dimmed lights, soft footsteps, distant voices. She stood near the window for a moment, looking out at the city. It appeared unchanged, steady and different. But she understood that within it, systems were already shifting. Because timing had reached its point, not of decision, that had already been made, but of execution. She returned to the room, sat down, opened her notebook one final time. She wrote slowly, all elements confirmed, evidence complete, intent established, sequence aligned. Then she paused and added one last line. No deviation. She closed the notebook, placed it beside the folder, then turned off the light. Morning would not require preparation, only action. Across the city, Miles Harrington reviewed his final briefing. Slides prepared, statements refined, numbers aligned. He moved with confidence, because from his perspective, every variable had been accounted for, every risk assessed, every outcome controlled. He believed the system would hold, because it always had. He did not see the gap, the one Autumn had identified. Not in data, not in structure, but in assumption, the belief that what was unseen could not affect what was visible. Autumn understood that assumption better than most, because she had built her entire process around its failure. She did not sleep immediately, not out of anxiety, but because she was reviewing one final variable: timing. Not when to act. That was already determined. But how precisely it would intersect. She adjusted one detail: the submission schedule. Not before the meeting, not after, during. At the moment when confirmation became irreversible, when signatures were expected, when attention was focused, when interruption could not be ignored, she wrote one final note: disclosure at peak convergence. Then she closed the notebook and rested, because everything that could be prepared had been. Everything that needed to be aligned was. Monday would not be uncertain, it would be exact. And Autumn Harrington had always worked best within precision. Monday began without urgency. Autumn woke before the hospital lights shifted from night mode to day. The room remained dim, the quiet broken only by the steady rhythm of Noah's monitor. His breathing had evened out overnight. Not perfect, but consistent. Consistency mattered more than improvement. Autumn checked the readings, within range. She noted the time, 5:42 a.m. Then she closed the notebook. She did not write more than necessary anymore. The structure was complete. What remained required execution, not observation. Noah stirred slightly. Is it morning, he asked. Yes. Are we going home today? Not today, Autumn said. Soon. He nodded. That was enough. Autumn stepped into the hallway and called Daniel Brooks. He answered on the second ring. I'm ready, she said. Daniel did not ask what that meant. What time, he replied. Noon. A pause. That aligns with the signing. Yes. Daniel exhaled quietly. Submission channel is prepared. Once you send it, triggers immediate review. Good. You understand what happens next. I do. Daniel hesitated, then added, there won't be a second opportunity to adjust this. I'm not planning one. Silence. Then Daniel said, send it when you're certain. Autumn ended the call. Certainty was not something she had been waiting for. It had already arrived. At 7:10 a.m. drive, Rachel Stein completed morning rounds. Stable overnight, she said. We're moving in the right direction. Autumn nodded. What variables remain in fatigue response? Cardiac rhythm under light activity, if those hold discharge within 48 hours. Autumn wrote it down, then closed the notebook. Thank you. Dr. Stein paused. You're leaving today, she said. It was not a question. Autumn met her eyes. For a few hours. Dr. Stein nodded. I'll have staff monitor closely. Autumn inclined her head slightly. That was enough. By 9:15 a.m., Autumn had arranged everything. Noah's care instructions, emergency contacts, medical notes. Each detail communicated clearly to the attending nurse. Nothing left uncertain. Because absence, like presence, required structure. At 10:02 a.m., she left the hospital. The city felt different, not louder, not faster, just aligned with something that had already been set in motion. Autumn did not rush. She moved through the streets with the same measured pace she always had. Taxi, Midtown, Stratos Global Headquarters, a building designed to project scale, glass exterior, minimalist lines, security visible but unobtrusive. Inside the lobby carried a controlled energy. People moved with purpose. Conversations remained low. Everything suggested importance without announcing it. Autumn approached the reception desk. Name, the receptionist asked. Autumn Harrington. The receptionist checked the list, paused, then looked up. You're not on the scheduled attendees. I'm not here for the meeting, Autumn said. A brief hesitation. Then the receptionist nodded. Please take a seat. Autumn sat. She did not insist. She did not explain. Because access, like everything else, would come through timing. At 11:17 a.m., the elevators opened. Miles Harrington stepped out, surrounded by 2 members of his legal team and a representative from Stratos. His posture remained composed, controlled, prepared. He did not see Autumn at first, not until she stood. Their eyes met across the lobby. Miles slowed, not visibly, but enough. Autumn, he said. Her name carried surprise, not concern. What are you doing here? Autumn held his gaze. I had something to deliver. Miles glanced at his watch. We're about to begin. I know. A pause. This isn't the place, he said. Autumn did not move. It is. Miles studied her. Something shifted. Not fully, but enough to register. We can talk after, he said. Autumn nodded once. You can. Miles waited, as if expecting more. When none came, he turned. The group moved toward the elevators. Autumn sat down again. She did not follow, because she did not need to be in the room. She only needed to reach it. At 11:53 a.m., she opened her laptop, connected to the secured network Daniel had prepared. The interface loaded immediately. Submission portal active. She attached the files, one by one, emails, financial records, ownership structures, audio, each document uploaded in sequence, each labeled, each verified. She did not rush. Precision required clarity. At 11:58 a.m., the final file uploaded. She reviewed the submission once more. No gaps, no inconsistencies, no ambiguity. At 11:59 a.m., she paused, not out of hesitation, but to confirm alignment. Inside the building, the meeting had begun. Board members seated, legal teams present, investors observing, Miles standing at the head of the table, prepared to finalize. Autumn closed her eyes briefly, then opened them. At 12:00 p.m., she pressed submit. The system responded instantly. Submission received. Review initiated. Notifications dispatched. Autumn closed the laptop, placed it back into her bag, then stood. Across the building in the conference room, a notification appeared. First on one device, then another, then all. Emails arriving simultaneously. Subject line identical. Regulatory disclosure. Immediate review required. Mia. Miles paused mid-sentence. The room shifted. Subtly at first, then completely. But Autumn did not see it. She did not need to, because the sequence had already begun. She walked toward the exit, unhurried, unseen, uninterrupted. Outside, the city remained unchanged. Traffic moved, people passed. Nothing signaled what had just occurred, but within the systems that mattered, everything had shifted. Autumn stepped onto the street, paused briefly, then continued forward. Her phone remained silent. For now, because reaction required processing, and processing required time. She did not wait for it. She returned to the hospital. Noah was awake when she entered. You're back, he said. Yes. Did you finish what you needed to do? Autumn placed her bag down. I did. Noah nodded, satisfied, because her answers always aligned with truth. Autumn sat beside him, checked the monitor, still stable, still consistent. She allowed herself a moment, not of relief, but of completion, because everything that needed to be done had been, not loudly, not publicly, but precisely. Across the city, Miles Harrington stood in a room that no longer moved according to his design. The structure he believed he controlled had shifted, not through force, but through exposure. And for the first time, control was no longer assumed. it was questioned. Autumn did not think about that. She did not need to, because her role in the sequence was complete. What followed belonged to the system, and the system, once activated, did not require her voice, only her evidence. The room did not erupt immediately. At first, it held. Silence, controlled and discipline, pressed itself into the space as the first notification appeared. Then another. Then a series of quiet vibrations echoed across the polished surface of the conference table. Miles Harrington stopped mid-sentence, not abruptly, just enough to register disruption. He looked down at his phone. The subject line appeared before the content fully loaded. Regulatory disclosure, immediate review required. He did not open it right away, because experience had taught him that timing, even in reaction, mattered. Across the table, one of Stratos Global's senior legal advisors had already begun reading. Her expression did not change, but her posture did, slightly forward, focused. Next to her, another executive checked his device. Then another. The shift moved through the room in increments. Not chaos, not yet. Just alignment. Miles placed his phone face down. "Let's continue," he said. His voice remained steady, measured, controlled. The presentation resumed. But attention did not. Because while Miles spoke, others read. And what they read did not belong to him. 3 minutes passed, then 5. The silence deepened, until finally the senior legal advisor from Stratos looked up. "We need to pause," she said. Her tone was calm, but final. Miles turned to her. "Is there an issue?" She held his gaze. "There's a disclosure that requires immediate review." Miles inclined his head slightly. "Can it wait until after no?" The word was not raised, but it carried weight. The room stilled. Miles allowed a brief pause, then nodded. "Of course." He stepped back from the table. "Let's take 5 minutes." No one moved immediately, because the information in their hands demanded more than 5 minutes. Miles picked up his phone, opened the email. The content loaded, structured, organized, precise. Emails, financial records, ownership mappings, audio. Each section labeled, each connection clear. No commentary, no accusation, only data. Miles read the first page, then the second. By the third, his expression shifted. Not visibly, not enough for most to notice. But enough. Because what he saw was not unfamiliar. It was aligned, too aligned. Across the room, conversations began in low tones. Legal teams leaned together. Investors checked attachments. Documents passed between screens. The silence fractured. Miles scrolled further. The audio file. He recognized the timestamp before he played it. He did not need to listen. But he did. Briefly. Just enough. He stopped it before it finished, closed the file, looked up. The room was no longer waiting for him. It was assessing him. The difference was immediate. The Stratos legal advisor stood. "We're suspending the signing," she said. Her voice remained controlled, procedural. "This requires full review." One of the investors spoke. "What exactly are we looking at?" She did not hesitate. Potential misrepresentation of valuation structures. Another voice. "Is this verified?" She responded without emotion. "It is documented." Miles stepped forward. "This is preliminary," he said. "Unverified material presented without context." The advisor met his eyes. "It is detailed enough to warrant investigation." Miles held his ground. "There are explanations. Then you'll have the opportunity to provide them," she said. The words were neutral, but irreversible, because the process had already begun. Then Miles looked around the room. Faces that had minutes ago reflected alignment now reflected distance. Not judgment, not yet, but separation. Because risk once introduced redefined proximity. Miles understood that. He always had. But understanding something did not prevent it. He turned back to the advisor. "Who submitted this?" She glanced at the header. "Anonymous disclosure channel." Miles knew better. He did not ask again, because the structure of the submission told him everything: the organization, the sequencing, the absence of assumption. There was only one person who would build it that way. He did not say her name, because saying it would make it real. Instead, he straightened slightly. "We'll address this," he said. The advisor nodded. "You will." She gathered her documents. "We're convening a separate review immediately." The meeting dissolved. Not dramatically, but completely. Conversations shifted to side rooms. Legal teams separated from executives. Phones replaced presentations. Miles stood at the head of the table, alone, for a moment. Then his legal team approached. "We need to assess exposure," one of them said. Miles did not respond immediately, because exposure was no longer a question. It was a condition. "What's the scope?" another asked. Miles looked down at the documents again. "All of it," he said. The words were quiet, but accurate. Across the building, internal systems activated. Compliance teams alerted. External counsel notified. Regulatory bodies flagged. The sequence Autumn had initiated moved through each layer without resistance, because it had been built to. Miles stepped away from the table, moved toward the window. The city outside remained unchanged. Traffic, movement, continuity. But inside, everything had shifted. Not through confrontation, not through accusation, but through alignment. Of facts, of records, of truth presented without distortion. Miles closed his eyes briefly, not in defeat, but in recognition. Because for the first time, he was no longer ahead of the sequence. He was inside it, and inside control did not belong to him. Back at the hospital, Autumn sat beside Noah. The monitor continued its steady rhythm, unchanged. Her phone vibrated once, then again, then continuously. She did not check it immediately, because reaction, like everything else, had its place. And this was not it. Noah looked up from his book. "Is that your phone?" he asked. "Yes. Are you going to answer it?" Autumn glanced at the screen. Names, unknown numbers. Daniel. Multiple missed calls. She turned the phone face down. Later she said. Noah nodded, satisfied, because her answers remained consistent. Autumn adjusted his blanket, checked the monitor, still stable, still within range. She allowed herself a moment, not of relief, but of confirmation, because the sequence had completed its first phase, disclosure. What followed would not require her presence, only her evidence. Across the city, Miles Harrington remained in a room that no longer responded to his direction. The narrative had shifted, not publicly, not yet, but structurally. And structural shifts, once initiated, did not reverse. They progressed. Autumn did not think about him, not because he was irrelevant, but because he was no longer within her control. And control for her had never been about people. It had always been about process. She opened her notebook, wrote one final line for the day, disclosure executed. Then she closed it, because the next phase did not require documentation. It required patience. And she had already built that. By the time the first official statement was drafted, the room at Stratos Global had already divided itself into functions: legal, risk, communications. Each moved independently but toward the same objective: containment. Not of information, because that was no longer possible, but of damage. Miles Harrington sat in a secondary conference room now, smaller, windowless, designed for internal discussions that did not require visibility. His legal team surrounded him. Documents spread across the table, laptops open, voices low, measured. "What we're looking at is exposure across multiple fronts," one attorney said. "Financial misrepresentation, potential fraud, regulatory violation." Miles listened. He did not interrupt, because interruption would not change the assessment. "What matters now is response timing," another added. "We need to control the narrative before this goes external." Miles leaned back slightly. "Is it external yet?" "Not publicly," the first attorney replied. "But it's already with regulators." Miles nodded once, then asked the only question that remained. How long? The room paused. Hours, came the answer. Maybe less. Silence settled. Not uncertain, just final. Miles looked down at the documents again. Autumn's structure was unmistakable. Every piece aligned. Every connection clear. No gaps, no excess. Nothing to challenge without unraveling the rest. He had built systems like this himself. He knew what it meant. It meant the person who created it had not acted impulsively. They had prepared, waited, chosen the moment. Miles exhaled slowly. Prepare a statement, he said. The attorneys moved immediately, drafting language, positioning phrasing, shaping tone. Miles did not contribute further, because the structure outside this room would not respond to language. It would respond to evidence. Across the building, the Stratos Executive Board convened separately, no longer in negotiation, now in assessment. The deal is suspended, the chair stated. No one objected. We cannot proceed under these conditions. A senior investor spoke. What's the likelihood of this holding up under scrutiny? The legal advisor responded. The documentation is thorough. It will trigger formal investigation, and Virion will be subject to regulatory review, possibly enforcement. The room absorbed it, because once the process began, it followed its own sequence. No negotiation, no adjustment, only progression. Back at the hospital, Autumn stepped into the hallway. Her phone continued to vibrate intermittently. She checked it now. Missed calls. Daniel. Unknown numbers. Messages short, direct. It's moving. Call me. They've paused the signing. Autumn read them without reaction, then selected one. Daniel. She called him. He answered immediately. You saw? He asked. Yes. It's already under review, he said, faster than expected. Autumn leaned against the wall. How are they responding? Exactly as anticipated, Daniel replied. Suspension, internal assessment, external notification pending. Autumn nodded. And exposure complete, he said. There's no containing this. Autumn did not respond, because containment had never been the objective. Are you safe? Daniel asked. Yes. They'll start tracing the source. They won't find anything actionable. Daniel paused. I know, but be cautious. I am. Another silence. Then Daniel added, You timed it perfectly. Autumn considered that. It was aligned, she said. She ended the call, returned to Noah's room. He was watching something on a small screen. Volume low, content unimportant. What happened? He asked. Autumn sat beside him. Something I needed to finish, she said. Is it done? Yes. Noah nodded, then returned to the screen. Because for him, completion was simple. It did not require explanation. Autumn glanced at the monitor. Still stable, still consistent. She adjusted the blanket slightly, then sat back. Across the city, the first external inquiries began. Regulatory agencies received the submission, assigned review teams, flagged urgency. Because the structure of the evidence demanded attention, within the SEC, a preliminary assessment was initiated. Documents reviewed, connections mapped, audio verified. No delay, because delay was not built into the system when evidence aligned this clearly. At Virion, systems internal alerts triggered, executives called into emergency meetings, departments halted non-essential operations, access logs reviewed. Because the question was no longer whether something had happened, but how much and how far it reached. Miles remained in the secondary room, the statement draft placed in front of him. He read it once, then again. Language of cooperation, commitment to transparency, confidence in internal processes. He placed it down. Release it, he said. The team hesitated briefly, then nodded. Because in absence of control, communication became the only available action. Minutes later, the statement was sent, distributed, published. But it did not change the structure already in motion, because statements responded to perception. And this was no longer about perception. It was about evidence. Miles stood, walked to the door, paused. Not because he did not know what to do next, but because for the first time, the next step did not belong to him. He opened the door, stepped into the hallway. People moved differently now, less direct, more aware. Conversations paused as he passed. Not out of respect, but out of recalibration, because association had changed. Miles understood that. He always had. But understanding did not prevent distance. Back at the hospital, Autumn remained where she was. Noah rested, the room quiet. Her phone lay still beside her now. The initial surge of reaction had passed. Processing had begun. She opened her notebook, not to document events, but to mark transition. Disclosure phase complete. Investigation initiated. She paused, then added one more line. No further action required. She closed the notebook, placed it beside her, then looked at Noah. Breathing steady, color improved, progress measurable. This was the only system she needed to monitor now, because the other one no longer required her presence. It would move, through procedures, through reviews, through consequences, without her. Across the city, Miles Harrington stood at the center of a structure that had begun to collapse inward. Not violently, not visibly, but inevitably. Because once the foundation was questioned, the rest followed. He did not call Autumn, not yet, because there were no words that would fit within the structure she had built. And he knew it. Autumn did not expect the call. She did not wait for it, because closure for her had already occurred. Not emotionally, but structurally. The sequence had been completed. The outcome was no longer hers to shape, only to witness. And even that she did not need to do. She turned off the screen beside Noah's bed, adjusted his blanket once more, then sat back. Quiet, still, present. Because in the end, the only thing that required her attention now was already in front of her. And it was enough. The first formal notice arrived at Virion Systems at 8:14 a.m. the following morning. Not through email, not through internal channels, but through an official regulatory communication delivered simultaneously to legal counsel and executive leadership. Subject line: Request for documentation and immediate cooperation, issued by the Securities and Exchange Commission. The language was precise, measured, non-accusatory, but final in its implication. Investigation initiated. Miles Harrington read it alone. His office, once a place of controlled movement and decisive action, had shifted into something quieter, not empty, but recalibrated. Assistants moved more carefully. Conversations lowered. Doors closed more often than they opened. Miles stood by the window, the notice displayed on his screen. He did not scroll. He did not need to. He understood what it meant. Every line, every request, every implied consequence. Behind him, his legal team waited, not impatient, but aware. "What's the scope?" one asked. Miles did not turn. "Full," he said. The word settled into the room. No one challenged it, because the structure of the submission made it unavoidable. The request listed specific categories: internal communications, financial records, ownership disclosures, transaction histories. Everything Autumn had already provided. But now, it would be requested from him. Under obligation, under scrutiny. "Timeline?" another attorney asked. Immediate Miles replied. He turned then, faced them. "Prepare full cooperation," he said. There was no alternative. Resistance would only accelerate escalation. Compliance at least initially created space, not protection, but time. And time, even limited, still held value. Across the building, similar notices reached other executives. Derek Vaughn, Virion's chief financial officer, received his at the same time. He read it twice, then called Miles. Miles answered. "We've both seen it," Derek said. "Yes." A pause. "How much do they have?" Miles did not hesitate. "Enough." Silence followed. Derek exhaled slowly. "We need to align." "We will," Miles said. But alignment no longer meant what it had before, because alignment required shared control. and that no longer existed. At Stratos Global, the response had already moved forward. The board issued a formal suspension of the merger, publicly framed as procedural, privately understood as necessary. Victoria Hale was no longer present in the building. Her office remained closed, her name removed from the immediate communication chain. Not erased, but distanced, because association now carried weight, and weight required management. By mid-morning, the first media inquiries began. Not yet headlines, but questions. Careful, directed. Financial journalists reaching out to confirm what had not yet been announced. Stratos declined comment. Virion issued its prepared statement, committed to transparency, cooperating fully, confident in internal processes. The language circulated, but it did not settle, because information once released into the right channels did not remain contained. It expanded. Back at the hospital, Autumn sat beside Noah as morning light filtered through the window. He was awake, stronger, the color in his face more consistent. "Can I walk today?" he asked. "We'll ask the doctor," Autumn said. Noah nodded. He accepted process. He always had. Autumn checked the monitor. Stable, within expected range. She wrote it down, then closed the notebook. Her phone remained quiet now. The initial wave had passed. What followed would move slower, more deliberately, because investigation required structure. And structure required time. At 10:32 a.m., Daniel Brooks arrived. He stood at the doorway. "May I?" he asked. Autumn stepped into the hallway. Daniel held a folder, not hers, new. "They've initiated full review," he said. "I know. They're requesting everything. They will receive it." Daniel studied her. "They'll also look for you." Autumn met his gaze. "They won't find anything outside what I've provided." "That's not what I mean," Daniel said. "They'll want to understand source, intent, context." Autumn considered that. Context is already in the structure. Daniel nodded. "Yes, but people look for narrative." Autumn did not respond. Because narrative had never been her objective, Daniel continued. "You've protected yourself well. Legally, you're positioned as a compliant reporter." Autumn wrote one line. Protected. Compliant. Still, Daniel added, "Be prepared for contact." "I am." He paused, then asked, "Do you want to be involved beyond this?" Autumn looked back toward Noah's room. "No." Daniel nodded. "Then we maintain distance." "Yes." He handed her the folder. Updated procedural guidance, in case they reach out. Autumn accepted it. "Thank you." Daniel hesitated, then added quietly, "This will take time." Autumn nodded. "I know." He left without further comment. Autumn returned to the room. Noah was sitting up now, swinging his legs slightly over the side of the bed. "Doctor said I can try walking later," he said. "That's good. Will you help me?" "Yes." He smiled slightly, small but real. Autumn sat beside him, placed the new folder in her bag. She did not open it. Not yet. Because nothing in it would change the sequence already in motion. Across the city, Miles Harrington sat in a room filled with documents he could no longer control. Requests, deadlines, obligations, each one narrowing his options. His phone remained active. Calls from board members, from investors, from individuals who had days ago aligned themselves with his trajectory. Now their tone had shifted, measured, careful, distant, because association once advantageous had become conditional. Miles answered each call, responded with the same language: cooperation, transparency, process. He did not mention Autumn. Not once. Because naming her would not change the structure she had built. It would only confirm it. And confirmation in this context held no advantage. By afternoon, the first internal audit teams began their work. Access logs reviewed, transaction records pulled, communication chains reconstructed, everything Autumn had already mapped. But now it would be verified independently, because systems required confirmation even when evidence appeared complete. At the hospital, Noah took his first steps down the hallway. Slow, measured, supported. Autumn walked beside him, not guiding, not correcting, just present. Each step counted, not because it needed to be, but because progress, like everything else, was tracked. Am I doing it right? Noah asked. Yes. Will I get better? Autumn looked at him. Yes. The word held no condition, because in this system, improvement was already visible, and visibility mattered. They returned to the room. Noah rested. Autumn sat beside him, quiet. Her phone buzzed once. A message. Unknown number. SEC would like to schedule a conversation. Autumn read it, then placed the phone down. She did not respond immediately, because timing even now mattered. She opened her notebook. New entry, contact initiated. She paused, then added, response pending. She closed it, looked at Noah, then at the window. The city continued, unaware, but within it, structures were shifting. Not visibly, not yet, but inevitably. Miles Harrington remained inside one of those structures, no longer directing, now responding. Autumn remained outside it, by design, because she had never needed to be inside to understand how it worked or how it would fail. The hospital discharged Noah on Wednesday morning, not with celebration, not with certainty, but with structure. Dr. Rachel Stein reviewed the final instructions with Autumn in a quiet consultation room. The tone remained consistent with everything that had come before. Careful, measured, conditional. He's stable enough to go home, she said. But this isn't resolution. It's continuation. Autumn nodded. What variables should I prioritize? She asked. Dr. Stein did not hesitate. Fatigue patterns, breathing irregularity, any deviation from baseline rhythm. Autumn wrote each one down. Medication schedule, follow-up appointments, emergency thresholds. Everything aligned. Call immediately if anything shifts, Dr. Stein added. I will. Dr. Stein paused, and then said something she had not said before. You've managed this well. Autumn met her eyes. I managed what I could. Dr. Stein nodded. That's all anyone can do. Autumn did not respond, because she understood something more precise. Not everyone did. She gathered the documents, placed them into her bag, then returned to Noah's room. He was already dressed, sitting upright, ready. Can we go now? He asked. Yes. Noah smiled, not broadly, but enough. They left the hospital without delay. No extended goodbyes, no lingering, because departure, like arrival, followed process. Outside, the air felt different, open, unstructured. Noah noticed it first. It smells different, he said. It does. They walked slowly to the car, each step measured, not fragile, but aware. Autumn helped him into the seat, adjusted the belt, closed the door. Then she paused for a moment, not to look back, but to confirm completion. Then she got in and drove. The house in Westchester remained as it had been, unchanged, quiet, still holding the shape of a life that had shifted. Autumn unlocked the door, led Noah inside. He moved carefully through the space, looking at familiar things as if they had become new. Can I sit here? He asked, pointing to the couch. Yes. He settled in. Autumn placed the medical bag on the table, removed the necessary items, organized them. Medication first, then monitoring equipment, then the folder from Dr. Stein. Everything in sequence, everything accessible. Noah watched her. You always do that, he said. Do what put everything in order. Autumn glanced at him. Yes. Why, Autumn considered the question. Because it makes things clear, Noah nodded. Satisfied. He leaned back, closed his eyes. Rest came quickly. Autumn sat across from him. The house was quiet, not empty, just different, because absence had redefined its structure. Miles had not returned. There had been no message, no call, not since Monday. Autumn did not check for one, because expectation required uncertainty, and she no longer operated within that. Her phone rested on the table. Silent. At 2:18 p.m. it lit up. An unknown number. Autumn answered. This is Special Counsel Rebecca Lynn from the SEC, the voice said. We'd like to schedule a formal discussion regarding your submission. Autumn listened, Yes. We can meet in person or remotely. Your preference. Autumn glanced at Noah. Sleeping. Stable. Remote, she said. Tomorrow morning, yes. Rebecca Lynn paused. Thank you for your cooperation. Autumn ended the call, then opened her notebook. Scheduled contact confirmed. Tomorrow morning. She closed it. No further notes. Because preparation had already been completed. The next step required presence, not structure. Later that evening, as the light shifted through the windows, Autumn stepped outside. The yard was quiet, still, unchanged. She stood there for a moment, not thinking, not reflecting, just observing. Because observation even now remained constant. A car passed slowly on the road. Then another. Nothing out of place, nothing disrupted. The world had not changed, only the systems within it. Inside, Noah stirred, called her name. Autumn returned immediately. Yes, I'm hungry. Autumn nodded. I'll make something. She moved to the kitchen. Prepared food. Simple, measured, appropriate. No excess, no delay. Because care, like everything else, followed sequence. They ate quietly. Noah spoke occasionally. About small things, books, games, things that existed outside systems. Autumn listened. Answered when needed. Present, fully. After dinner, she checked his vitals, recorded them, within range, consistent. She allowed herself a moment, not of relief, but of confirmation, because stability once observed repeatedly became pattern. And pattern mattered. That night after Noah had gone to sleep, Autumn sat alone in the living room. The house remained still. Her phone remained silent. She did not turn on the television. She did not open her laptop, because there was nothing left to review. The system she had built had already moved beyond her. Now it belonged to process, to procedure, to consequence. She opened her notebook one last time, not to document events, but to mark transition, personal phase complete, external process active. She paused, then added, no further intervention required. She closed it, placed it on the table, then leaned back. Across the city, Miles Harrington sat in an office that no longer reflected authority. Documents replaced plans, requests replaced decisions. He had not returned home, not because he could not, but because home now existed outside the structure he understood. Calls continued, meetings extended, legal strategies formed. But each one moved within limits he did not control. He did not reach out to Autumn. Not yet. Because he understood something clearly now. There were no words that would alter what had already been set in motion. And words without effect held no value. Back in Westchester, Autumn turned off the lights, checked on Noah once more. Stable, breathing steady. She adjusted the blanket, then left the room. She did not look at her phone again. She did not check for messages, because everything that needed to be said had already been expressed, not through language, but through structure, through timing, through precision, and those did not require repetition. The call with the Securities and Exchange Commission began at 9:00 a.m. sharp. Autumn sat at the dining table, her laptop open, notebook beside it, though she did not expect to use it much. The room was quiet. Noah was still asleep upstairs, his breathing steady through the monitor she kept within reach. The screen connected without delay. Rebecca Lynn appeared first, composed, direct, precise. Two others joined shortly after. Legal, analytical, Miss Harrington, Rebecca said. Thank you for your time. Autumn nodded. You've reviewed the materials submitted, she asked. Yes, Rebecca replied, extensively. A pause followed. Not for effect, for structure. We'd like to clarify a few points, Rebecca continued. Autumn listened. Your submission is highly organized, one of the analysts added. Chronological, corroborated. There are no apparent gaps. Autumn said nothing, because confirmation did not require response. Rebecca leaned slightly forward. Can you confirm that all materials were obtained through lawful access? Yes. No unauthorized systems, no. Rebecca nodded. And the audio file, internal archive, authorized. The analyst made a note. The questions continued. Specific, targeted, ownership structures, transaction timing, email chains. Autumn answered each one without hesitation, not elaborating, not interpreting, only confirming. Because interpretation introduced uncertainty, and uncertainty weakened structure. After 20 minutes, Rebecca paused. "Your documentation establishes a clear pattern," she said, "and importantly, intent." Autumn did not respond. Rebecca continued. "This will move forward as a formal investigation. Potential enforcement action is likely." Autumn nodded once. "I understand." Another pause. Then Rebecca asked, "Do you wish to be identified as a reporting party or remain protected under confidentiality provisions?" Autumn considered the question. "Not long. Confidential." Rebecca nodded. "That will be maintained." The call moved toward conclusion. "We may contact you again if additional clarification is required," Rebecca said. Autumn inclined her head. "I'll be available." The screen went dark. The room returned to silence. Autumn closed the laptop, did not open the notebook, because there was nothing left to document. Everything had transitioned fully into process. She sat for a moment, still, not reflecting, not anticipating, just present. Upstairs, Noah called her name. Autumn moved immediately. "Yes, are you done?" "Yes." Noah smiled slightly. "Can we go outside later, if your vitals hold?" He nodded, satisfied. Autumn checked the monitor. Stable, consistent. She recorded the time, then closed the notebook. By midday, the first public headlines appeared. Not dramatic, not exaggerated, carefully worded. Virion Systems under regulatory review following disclosure. Merger with Stratos Global suspended pending investigation. Miles Harrington did not appear in the headlines yet. Not directly, but his name would follow, because structure once exposed did not remain anonymous. Across the city, he sat in a room filled with people who now spoke to him differently. Not with deference, not with alignment, but with caution. Legal advisors outlined scenarios, possible charges, possible timelines, possible outcomes. Miles listened. He did not argue, because argument required leverage, and leverage had shifted. "What's the immediate impact?" he asked. "Position is compromised," one attorney said. "Board will need to respond." Miles nodded. "In long term, the answer came slower, dependent on findings. But exposure is significant." Miles looked down at the table, then at his hands. Steady, controlled, but no longer directing. He understood that, because he had built systems like this before, and he knew how they moved once activated. They did not stop. They concluded. Back in Westchester, Autumn stood in the yard with Noah. He walked slowly beside her, each step measured, but stronger than before. "Am I getting better?" he asked. "Yes." "Will I be able to run again?" Autumn looked at him. "Yes." The word carried no condition, because progress was visible, and visibility mattered. They walked in silence for a while. The air was still, the world unchanged. No sirens, no interruptions, just space. Noah stopped, looked up at her. "Are things okay now?" Autumn considered the question, then answered. "They are clear." Noah nodded. That was enough, because clarity for him meant safety. For Autumn, it meant something else. Completion. That evening, after Noah had gone to sleep, Autumn returned to the dining table. The notebook remained where she had left it, closed. She opened it once more, not to record events, but to mark the end. Final phase initiated. She paused, then added one last line. No further action. She closed the notebook, placed it carefully on the table, then stood, walked through the house, turning off lights, checking doors, confirming what was already known. Everything in place, everything aligned. Across the city, Miles Harrington remained inside a system that no longer responded to him. Investigations deepened. Records expanded, connections verified, each step narrowing the space around him. He did not call Autumn, not that night, not the next, because he understood something with complete clarity now. There was no conversation that would alter what had already been set, no explanation that would restructure what had been revealed, and no appeal that would reverse sequence. Autumn did not wait for him. She did not expect him, because expectation required uncertainty, and uncertainty had been removed. She stepped into Noah's room one last time. Check the monitor. Steady. She adjusted the blanket, then paused. Not for long, just enough, because presence even in completion mattered. Then she left the room, closed the door quietly, and walked away, not as someone who had won, not as someone who had lost, but as someone who had finished, without noise, without spectacle, without needing to be seen, because the outcome did not belong to her. Only the structure had, and that had already been delivered. The story does not end with a verdict. It does not close with a courtroom or a headline that resolves everything neatly. Because real consequences do not arrive all at once. They unfold, quietly, systematically, over time. Miles Harrington will face what comes next through procedures he once believed he understood. Reviews, hearings, decisions that will not ask for his approval. The system will move forward not with anger, but with precision. And Autumn will not be there to watch it. She will be somewhere quieter, where mornings begin with steady breathing instead of monitored alarms, where days are measured not by risk, but by recovery, where progress is small but real. She will not explain what she did, not to the public, not to those who ask, because truth once placed correctly does not require defense. It stands, and sometimes that is enough. If you stayed with this story, you already understand something most people overlook. Strength does not always speak. Justice does not always arrive loudly. And silence, when chosen carefully, can carry more weight than anything said out loud. If this story meant something to you, you can let it stay with you a little longer. Or you can leave a thought below. Where you're watching from, what time it is where you are. And if you choose to return for more stories like this, you already know where to find them.